welcome to everyone who's here. If you've got any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer pretty much every question. So yeah, let's just jump into it. So April was actually quite a good month. It was our second highest performance in terms of overall return, and that's despite inspired. I think it's whatever. Basically, that was even with the crypto correction that did take place, where we saw pretty much a 30 to 40% drop in most cryptos, and we still managed to pull out with around 24% to close out the month, bringing the total year-to-date returns to just over 130%. So I'm very happy with that overall. Also, there was quite a large increase in copiers over the past month. The overall size of our portfolio essentially grew from, I think it was, let me just double check, I've got it on the second page. So it grew from, I think it was $170,000 to just over $570,000. So that was honestly some amazing growth. I'm very grateful for everyone who did copy and did join us throughout our journey. I know quite a few people did unfortunately catch it just sort of at the peak of the cryptos and then had to weather the storm during the correction. But those who did manage to get in after the correction, I think everybody's well into the green already. They made like a quick 5 to 7% by getting in during that correction. I wasn't ever really concerned about the drop. At the end of the day, it was caused by the mass liquidations of derivative contracts. And then as soon as that sort of leveled out, it was only a matter of time before we carried on the bull path again. So I wasn't ever concerned. I know a lot of people got freaked out, especially those new to crypto, and that's just one of those things when it comes to crypto. A lot of the new people haven't weathered the waves and the storms of crypto and what it can give. So it's definitely an experience, and I think it's a good experience overall to go through such a short-term correction like that for anyone who's new, because it's maybe a week or two of pain, and then you see how quickly it can actually recover, and 9 times out of 10 does recover. Obviously, there are those exceptions to the rule, like 2017, 2018, but that is only really ever a problem when you have like negative news piling on top of each other and causing this massive catalyst that continues to drive the price down. So there wasn't really anything that happened. There was a lot of like fake news, I'd call it, floating around crypto and what's causing it to drop. Like I said, the only real reason that I could see was the liquidation of those contracts. And once that had leveled out, obviously there was a little bit of fear that drove the price further down, but there was nothing coming out that would actually keep the price down. There was a whole lot of fake articles about the power consumption and that being a potential problem. If you don't listen to CoinDesk's podcast, I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's on Spotify, and they fully go into details to why all of those claims were actually it was sort of a spit in the face of journalism, because there was like no research really done in those reports that were put out, and they're quickly torn apart, especially in that podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, I'd highly encourage it. It'll help settle your mind about the long-term power consumption of these cryptos. A lot of them also use renewable energy, as well as the fact that the miners use the oversupply of energy. So that makes up a fair chunk of the energy consumption as well, and that should definitely be kept in mind. So I'm not too concerned about the long-term power consumption of crypto in general. And I think we saw over I'd say the past week at how quickly it can recover when there's nothing keeping that price down. So to go into some of the balance sheet items, right now there's not much cash on hand. So I recently opened 2 positions. It was one in Visa. That was pretty much a crypto trade. My main reason for opening that position is just how excited they were over the prospects of being involved with cryptocurrency, as well as trying to be a market leader in terms of the adoption and integration of crypto. So even though it's sort of like a finance stock, I see it as more of a crypto-based trade than anything else. Plus the company is really strong. It's got like great fundamentals. So that was my reason there. The second trade that was open towards the end of the month, which I'll get a little bit more into later on, was the UK. It was a UK index based ETF. So that was just to sort of shift some of the money away from the US stocks. I think everything that's been going on in the US market, plus the US markets, I wouldn't say it's flat, but it's like Nasdaq really struggling to break 14K and stay above 14K, as well as I think we may be slightly overexposed to the US market. So I see that as a general hedge position to hopefully continue growing, but also just in case something does hit the US market, it's not going to have too big of an impact on our overall portfolio. So as you can see right now, crypto, it's making up about 50% of the total fund, with ETFs around 17% and stocks at 33%. Cash is relatively low, sitting at 2%, but I will probably look to maybe take some profits over towards the middle or end of this month to maybe bump up that cash position a little bit more. I would like to have some more cash on hand just to take advantage of any potential opportunities. And right now, I don't think this is enough to fully take advantage without having to liquidate other positions. So that's just my logic there. Right now, my overall equity accounts for 3% of the overall assets under management. As I've mentioned a few times, this is going to be changing. Hopefully, it's going to be changing as of around about 1st of July. I'm planning to make quite a substantial deposit where it's going to bump my total equity up to about $28,000. So obviously it depends on the overall portfolio growth and AUM growth, but if our AUM continues to increase at the rate it has been last month, I'm not expecting it to increase at the rate it did last month because last month was just crazy. But if it does increase by a substantial amount again, then obviously I can't match the overall percentage I want to. That would eventually just require, I think, me to have between like $50,000 and $100,000 in eToro right now, which I'll be honest, I don't have. The most I could probably bump it up to is maybe 30 to 40 for the time being, but I definitely will look to start another fundraising over the next year or so to maybe bump that up to 50,000. Ultimately, I would like about $50,000 in eToro, and then we'll sort of just take it from there. So I'm doing my best to keep my own equity percentage as high as I can compared to the overall copiers. But of course, limitations are cash flow. So we'll just sort of have to see how it goes. Sort of going into April as a whole, I'll arrange by gain so you can see the top winners and top losers. Top winner, definitely Binance, 68% growth in 1 month. That was crazy, and that's including the correction that took place. So there were quite a few trades that allowed me to do this. First of all, I closed out a massive part of our position at around $590. I then bought back a small portion at $590 at a later stage. And then I opened another position, an equal size position at around, I think it was the 500 mark. So it drastically lowered our average buy-in. And then we were able to ride that wave back up to just over $600. So overall, I'm very, very happy with how that trade went. And no real regrets there. Next are IOTA, XRP, and Ethereum. So IOTA has performed extremely well. I think my only regret with IOTA was not taking more profit. I closed out, I believe it was 2 positions during the month, just taking some profit. But when it reached the 200% gain, I maybe should have closed a third. But overall, I'm happy with our current allocation and overall exposure into IOTA. So there's no concerns about the current exposure there. Same with XRP. It's been doing extremely well. Only thing I maybe could have done different there was open an additional position when it did hit its low during the correction. But I think the problem there was I didn't want to be overexposed to crypto. And I think that we'd already had such a great month that it's not worth overexposing the new copiers to a level of risk that the old copiers are protected from. Ethereum has done such a great job over the past month or two. I think it's slowly, well, not slowly, it's actually quite quickly taking away, not taking away from Bitcoin, but it's closing the gap between itself and Bitcoin. And I think that's important. I'd like to see Ethereum eventually at, say, 60 to 80% of Bitcoin's market cap. I think that is maybe a goal that we could see in a couple of years from now. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But the more Ethereum slowly starts taking away from, well, not taking away again, the more Ethereum closes that gap between itself and Bitcoin, I think that's just going to benefit us more, as I think Ethereum right now is the largest position in our portfolio. Let me see. So invested 1,500, but that's not, let me maybe go to the whole year-to-date summary. Where's Ethereum? So yeah, it's currently sitting at a $1,000 investment with a market value of around 1,700. So it does make up a large portion of our portfolio, but it's a good thing in my eyes. Let's see what else happened that was noticeable. So there was some decent growth from the tech stocks. Nvidia and Apple performed relatively well, making about 8 to 12% this month, as well as Amazon following suit. Nasdaq as a whole grew about 6% through our QQQ position. And then we had relatively flat performance from AMD. I still think AMD is extremely undervalued right now. Between AMD and Baidu, I think those are my top stock picks. If you are looking to get into any of these, I'd highly recommend doing your own research. Look at the fundamentals of the companies. Take a look at their management teams. I think both are great, but obviously do your own due diligence before making any decisions. Visa was one of our new positions, so it's down 2%, but that's just due to the normal fluctuations you see in the market and nothing particular with the company itself. We also opened new positions in Chainlink. I essentially had the option to open a position in Chainlink or Uniswap. I chose to do Chainlink just because I've got more experience and better understanding of Chainlink than Uni. In hindsight, if I had chosen Uni instead, this probably would have ended on about a 10% gain for the month, but unfortunately it was just picking the wrong one of the two. But long term, I'm still bullish on Chainlink. I think it's going to continue to perform. As I said previously, I'd love for eToro to add Polkadot. The moment they do that, I'll be buying. I'll probably have a buy order. Well, I wish you could have a buy order before they add a stock, just so the moment they add it, you do get in. But I did pick up some Polkadot, some additional Polkadot recently on my private wallets. Otherwise, Bitcoin, relatively flat performance this month, minus 4%. I think that is, yeah, it's expected. The rate at which it was growing wasn't sustainable, so I don't mind seeing this, especially with the altcoins rallying as much as they did and Ethereum showing a lot of strength. So I think as long as Ethereum shows strength and Bitcoin holds above the $50,000 to $55,000 mark, I'm happy. Yeah. And then the worst performers were Activision Blizzard, unfortunately, as well as Tron. So as I mentioned at the start of the stream, that the Tron trade was a little bit of FOMO. It was performing extremely well, and I maybe opened that a little bit too soon. I was planning on slowly increasing my exposure into Tron. If it dipped below 1.1, I think, but it never really did. And when it did, I wasn't entirely sure about it, so I just refrained from that. This trade, I will most likely look to close when it's up by maybe 5-10%. Not too much of a fan of Tron in the super long run. I think that there's a lot better projects that we could be in. So expect this position to close. If you are a new copier, you've got quite a lot of way to go on the way up. And if you are an old copier, then hopefully we can just mitigate the losses on that trade and then close out with a small profit before I allocate into something else. What stocks do you think will go up the most in the coming weeks? So like I mentioned previously, Baidu and AMD are some of my top picks, just for stocks in general. I would recommend you do look into it yourself, and do your own research there. And another one that does have a lot of potential is Ford. So Ford unfortunately got hit pretty hard during their financial release. Like their sales and overall fundamentals of the company look relatively solid, actually. And I think that the massive sell-off that happened there was a complete overreaction. So we'll have to see what actually does come of it and where it goes. But yeah, I'd maybe look into those three as potentials. See what you can spot in their financials and do some research into it. All the electric cars stocks, super good long term. Yeah, I think to a point. Obviously you got to include Tesla into that category, and I'm always very skeptical of Tesla. They've done very, very well over the past few months or past few years, but I still stay away from the stock as a whole. I'd personally much rather open a position in like Ford. Reproj, how's it going, man? Okay, so taking a look at the exposure by industry, the vast majority is in crypto right now, sitting at about 48%, 49%. My immediate target for our crypto exposure is between, I'd say, 50 to 60%. It sort of depends on what happens, but I'm very hesitant to go over 50%. So I'm very happy with where it is at the moment. I think the only reason it would go to say 60% is due to a crypto bull run. So I'll wait for that. But I don't think I'm going to be opening many additional crypto trades over the next like month or two. What might happen is I might close some out and open new ones, but I'm going to try keep the exposure around 50%. UK 2030 petrol and diesel ban. Yeah, it's definitely going to do great things for like electric cars in general. The reason I said I wouldn't do Tesla is I'm just very skeptical, like with Elon. One tweet by Elon and Tesla's share price just fluctuates way too much for my liking. I don't want to expose my copiers to that type of volatility. So yeah, I mean, Elon, as much as he likes to meme around and everything, I think it can have a negative impact on the stock. So I personally just prefer to stay away. If other people want to invest in Tesla, like, go for it. But it's just a level of risk I don't want to take. Elon is too smart. I mean, he's a very intelligent guy, but yeah, like I'll follow him on Twitter, meme with him, enjoy the general discussions around it. But in terms of investing in what he invests, like Dogecoin, not going to happen. I'm staying very, very far away from Doge. Buy Doge as soon as Elon tweets. Yeah, but yeah, I've made my feelings towards Doge very public. I'm not a fan of the crypto. I don't mind it being a meme coin. I don't mind it like having small little pumps, but I think the levels it's trading at right now, it's more detrimental to the whole of the space than it is good. There's too many inexperienced people climbing into it, and let's face it, when Doge inevitably crashes back down to the levels it should be at, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, and it's just room for regulators to sink their claws in, and that's the last thing any of us wants. I don't think anybody wants more regulation in the space, or regulators to even have a reason to try implement regulation. What do you think about XRP? Thinking of opening a small position. Overall, I like XRP. I think I'm like 95% sure they're going to win the case against the SEC, or if there is some type of settlement, I think it's going to be so small that it's not going to impact the like Ripple as a whole. And XRP is already so like decentralized that it is essentially its own entity. So I don't think there's any long-term implications that are going to come from this case. If anything, it's going to give us a better foundation for overall legislation and regulation within the space. So we'll have to see how it goes. But my overall predictions are that Ripple are going to win, or it's going to, even if there's a settlement, it's going to be seen as a win, and it's going to set a precedent for all future cases like that. So yeah, I mean, to go back to your question, I am a fan of XRP. I don't think it's going to like 10, 20x, but I definitely think there's maybe a 2 to 3x in its relatively near future. Okay, so taking a look at some of the indices, you can see that the main indice movements were QQQ, who raked in about 6% and accounts for 7.55% of the overall ETF index positions, as well as our China Tech, which I'm actually surprised that it increased by 2%. At one stage, China was not doing very well, and I thought that this would decrease a lot more than it did, but it only accounts for like 3.3% of our overall portfolio. So the potential impact on the overall returns aren't that high. And then lastly, the 3% position that was opened in the UK 100 ETF. So I'm pretty bullish on where we're going to go in terms of China in the near future. I'm hoping that the negative sentiment around the Chinese stocks changes soon, because it definitely deserves to pick up. In total, between the China Tech ETF and where's the other one? It's FXI here. So overall, it makes up about 7% of our portfolio. And there's definitely a lot of potential for it to keep growing. And it could have a sizable impact on May's returns if it does continue rising. So we'll just have to see what comes of it. What about XLM? It's minus 15% sitting in my portfolio. I think XLM and XRP are, in the long term, they follow a very similar trend line. They both look to sort of achieve the same goal to a point. XLM, they've got a lot of partnerships with various organizations, same as XRP, well, same as Ripple. So we'll sort of have to see what happens there. But I think in general, XLM and XRP, they're a good combination. If you've got one, it's maybe not a bad idea to diversify into the other. That's what I've done. I've opened a small position in XLM just as a mini hedge against XRP. So then moving away from the index-based ETFs, we can take a sort of a look at the electronic technology. So you've got Nvidia, you've got Apple, AMD, and Micron. So Micron's taken a bit of a hit. It's unfortunate, but not too worried here. I think in the long term, it should continue to push higher. Nvidia and Apple they had an amazing month, especially Nvidia rising 13%. And then AMD, it should have closed a lot higher than it did. They had amazing financials. They had a great quarter. They absolutely smashed the earnings expectations, but the stock still fell when it opened. So that was very, very strange for me to see, especially with the fact that it was up about 4% in the pre-market. As well, it was up the subsequent day in the pre-market as well. And it just almost keeps falling flat, it's a little bit strange, but I mean, what can we do? It looks like the software sector got hit a little bit hard, or at least what we were invested in. Netflix got completely nailed. They had a lackluster performance in terms of their financials, and that just caused me to close the position. I've been bitten too many times by Netflix's financial releases, so I think that especially with all the additional streaming services that are being introduced, COVID, the original series are a little bit limited. So maybe when Netflix starts picking up their internal production a little bit more, I'll look to get back in. But for now, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and watch very closely and see if I can take advantage of anything. Activision Blizzard. I was hoping this would be a short to medium term trade. Unfortunately, it has backfired a little bit, but that's how some of these things go. You can't win them all. And then retail trade, obviously Amazon up 12%. Most of these companies have done a very good job. If you look at retail traders like Amazon, Alibaba, as well as Shopify, even though Shopify is a little bit different because it's more of a platform. Yeah, the growth in Shopify has been really good, and I think they've got a good business model. I'm bullish on it long term, but I think in terms of what you can be exposed to for the type of return you're going to get, I don't know. For me, it's just, it doesn't meet that return risk level that I'm looking for. Okay, And then realized proceeds for the quarter. So there were quite a lot of things that happened here. We closed out a total of about $2,800 in XRP, which makes up about 3% of our overall portfolio. I have since bought back into XRP, but this was me taking advantage of the bull run at the beginning of the month, as well as the subsequent bull runs that followed after that. Binance Coin, I briefly spoke about this earlier, but what we managed to do there is we sold out at 590. It then dropped all the way to 500. So I bought a smaller position at 590 after a few days, and then I bought back in lower at about 500. So that brought our overall buy-in price to around 540, 550, somewhere in that area. And also it decreased the overall exposure. So there's a smaller exposure than we previously had. And in terms of what Binance can do long term, I'm not as bullish on Binance Coin as I am on maybe some of the other ones. So that's why I've essentially decreased the overall exposure by about a third to about a half if you include the profits that were taken. And then lastly, Netflix. I spoke a little bit about that. And then IOTA, that was profit taking. That was with a gain of, I think it was between 200 and 300%. So I needed to trim off some of those profits because they were just far too high. What's your price target for Ethereum? It depends on how far in the future you're looking at. So for the short term, I would say I'd like to see $3,000 by the end of next week. I think if we can hold above $3,000, then it definitely sets up for a nice long-term bull run, hopefully to around 5K. And then I'd love to see, maybe it's me being overly optimistic, but I'd love to see a $10,000 Ethereum by the end of next year. That might be a bit over optimistic, I'm not sure, but I think the way I see Ethereum is it's still very undervalued. If you compare its market cap to Bitcoin, it should hold a far greater comparison. Okay, looking at some of the year-to-date movements, the overall exposure to industries over the course of 2021 so far has been around 62% in crypto. This is based off of a total invested value. So anytime I open or close a trade compared to the overall allocation, that forms part of this exposure graph. And that's why the exposure here is so high. It's because crypto is by far my most traded industry, and it does make up already 50% of our portfolio. So it's just natural that this will make up about, I'd say this should be around 60 to 70%. Anything there, I'm generally happy. You mentioned XRP earlier. Any near-term PTs, June, July, given they're making the SEC look like monkeys right now. So I briefly spoke about the SEC case. In terms of price targets, I think, what are we currently at? Let's take a look at XRP. So I think we're at about 1.5. So looking at XRP, I think early short-term price targets, around 1.75 to 2. That would be my short to medium term price target. I think a lot of what's going on in the SEC case is already factored into the price. Obviously, there'll most likely be a pump that does take place if the SEC do, if Ripple do win the case, then I'm sure there will be a pump in the price. But I think the high chance of Ripple winning the case has already been factored into the price of XRP. So I think it'll strengthen the entire industry, not just XRP itself. So my price targets may be 1.75 to around 2. That's just as a result of the case. Obviously not including any other type of bull run that does take place in the meantime. So if there is a bull run on top of that, then obviously my price target would be a lot higher than that. If the market does for some reason turn bearish, which I don't think it will, then my price target would be lower. But in terms of if XRP had to, or if Ripple had to win right now, I think the price would go to about 1.75 to 2. Well, that's at least the idea I have at the moment. Speaking of XRP, it has made up the vast majority of our, well, I wouldn't say the vast majority, but a large portion of our total year-to-date realized proceeds, sitting at about what's this? About $3,800 out of a total of, let's see, what's our total? A total of 17,700. So it is quite a large chunk. That in combination with Binance Coin. I'm very happy with what I've been able to do with these two cryptos. A lot of it has been buy or selling at or is relatively close to the peak and then buying back in at lower levels, which just in general increases our overall profits from these. So I'm happy with these as a whole. There's also been quite a nice amount made from Ethereum and Bitcoin. This was towards the beginning of the year. I don't have any plans to sell Ethereum or Bitcoin. The only thing I might do with regards to Ethereum is if it continues to climb at the rate it is and it makes up over a certain percentage of our portfolio, I will be trimming some of those profits. Just for those of you who don't know, if I ever go to a point where one asset makes up more than 20% of my portfolio, my risk immediately jumps to 7, and I don't want that. So I think the most I'll keep it at is maybe 15% of the overall portfolio. What are we currently sitting at now? Let me see. I think it was around 10% the last time I checked, which I'm fine with. So exposure by industry, and I want to see Ethereum. Yeah, so right now it's sitting at about 10%, which I'm fine with. Anything around 15%, I'll start trimming profits. And then what I intend to do with that is I want to keep the overall crypto exposure to between, like I mentioned, 50 to 60%. So any profits I take from Ethereum will most likely go back into other crypto projects. It's a way to diversify within the industry, while still taking profits at the same time. So that's my current plan there. So I think majority of these Ethereum proceeds were trimming, and then also I think at the beginning of the year I closed out nearly all the crypto positions during one of the corrections, which overall did benefit us. I think we managed to make an extra couple percent from doing that during the first major correction of the year. Some other areas in terms of the best performance by individual assets. This is the gains by investment, TVPI. Binance Coin with a 2.47 TVPI, which is really great. That's essentially 150% on the overall invested amount, which I'm very happy with. I think that works out to a couple trades closed at around 300%, around 200 to 300%. Which brings the overall return to about 150%. So if you don't know how to read TVPI, essentially just take the value here and minus 1 from it. So that'll make it 1.47, which is 147%. But that's on invested amount. So that's not the total profit taken from all of these trades. It's the essentially the total realized value. So it's your realized proceeds plus your current market value. And then you divide that by what you've invested in the sector. So the more I invest in Binance, even if I take smaller profits, it'll bring this number down. But the general profit taking has been really good in that area. Along with Ethereum, bringing in around 120% year to date, compared to the invested value. And we also have EOS with close to 90%. So what happened with EOS is I would have liked to have been more exposed before I ended up taking these profits. It was one of those cryptos that sort of flew under the radar and then all of a sudden started going on a huge bull run. I think at one stage it was up like 200 to 300% as well, which was it was crazy. It was great though. So we did manage to bag some decent profit there, and I think we're still up a fair amount on our current position. In terms of stocks in general, Amazon is by far the best performer with around 63%, with Google coming in hot behind it. This is mostly also due to Google's earnings. Had a really great earnings. I think it ended up rallying about 5% after the earnings. And I think it could be a very good stock to hold over the next few months, or at least that's my current plan. Nvidia, another good one that's been performing well. And then the others have just been relatively flat or falling off. So I'll take a look at some of the losers year to date. I think it's important to not only focus on the good, but also the bad. So some of the losers, anything below 1 is seen as a loss. So the ones I'd say that are potentially a concern or have been a concern to me is maybe, I think from Uber down. Actually, I'll take from Activision down. I'm not happy with what Activision's been doing. So Activision's a relatively new position. So hasn't had the same run that everything else has so far. Why is this showing as an index? That shouldn't be the case. I might have accidentally listed it as an index. Whoops. I'll fix that. Oh no, sorry, it's industry. And okay, never mind. It was fine. So Uber's been very much underperforming. I'll give it maybe another month or two. I want to maybe do a deeper dive into their fundamentals again. I just have a look before I make any long-term decisions on what I'm going to do there. But if I do think that the future prospects aren't as great as I initially thought, I'll look to trim that position and maybe invest it elsewhere. We also have AMD and Baidu. Even though these are both underperforming right now, I'm still very bullish on both of them. I kind of wish I could increase my overall exposure, but I don't want to overdo it too much, as they already do make up quite a decent chunk of the portfolio. I mean, they're 2% a pop, and I think they've got a lot of potential. So if they do continue decreasing for whatever reason, I might look to open a second position in these two, but we'll have to wait and see there. And then lastly, we have the worst performing crypto in the portfolio so far, which is Tron. That was opened at a little bit too high of a price. It makes up 1% of the overall portfolio, so I'm not too concerned there. Its relative impact is going to be negligible, even if it does continue to drop. But I do think it's still got quite a little bit of way to recover before I do intend on closing it. Like I said earlier, I'll look to maybe close it at a 5 to 10% profit, if we can get there. Lastly, we have the worst performer, which is the Chinese technology ETF. So this one, I have no intention on closing. I think China is very undervalued as a market right now. And I think if it does swing and turn bullish again, this will be one of the faster recovering positions that we do have. If it wasn't for the FXI position, or this position here, the China 50 index, then I would probably increase further exposure into the Chinese sector. But like I said, I would prefer to diversify away from both China and the US, and maybe look to some more European ETFs at the moment. And that's what we've been doing. I mean, we opened the UK 100 ETF, and I'm relatively happy with that. And I'm looking at maybe a German index ETF, but there. Okay, guys, but I think that is pretty much where I'm going to leave it for today's stream. Once again, thank you so much for everyone who did stop by. If you did enjoy the stream, then feel free to follow me on Twitch or any other of the social media platforms. All of those links are down below. And I will catch you guys next time.